Louisville Autism Center is an actual place. It's on the COSARES Charity campus on Eastern Parkway in Louisville, Kentucky. It was formed as a venture of 3 different entities. One was the University of Kentucky. University of Louisville. You can tell I'm an old UK brat. Sometimes it slips. So University of Louisville and the Department of Pediatrics. Secondly, the University of Louisville, the School of Education. And then third, the COSARE Charities. And this actually came about because of one of the members of the Board of Trustees of the University of Louisville had a grandson with autism. And she said, there's nothing in our community for autism at all. Sort of similar to many of the feelings that you guys probably have in the room now. And so literally the president got the dean of the School of Education, the dean of the School of Medicine on the steps of Grayhire Hall and said, we're gonna have an autism center. And then he turns around to the deans, and the deans were shocked. The deans didn't know what he said, and said, you guys work it out. So 7 years later, they finally get a new director, and that's myself. So I'm the director of the U of L Autism Center, and I also sit in an academic chair, which allows me to do a lot of leadership stuff, which includes traveling to Western Kentucky. So anyways, when I got there were many different problems. Dr. Cecil alluded to one, and that was that the diagnostics were not under the U of L Autism Center roof. Okay, and we're slowly but surely changing that. I have pathways now where I can get my psychologist. I'm going to have, as of October, I'm going to have 2 PhD psychologists and 2 master's level psychologists, where we can actually do diagnostics as well as we do treatment, and we'll talk about the treatment intake in a second. I also found that that we needed a way to be able to actually follow the progress of our patients. Okay, and for a guy who's a physician scientist like myself, I was taught in my PhD to be very quantitative. Well, it turns out that you can't be very quantitative in actually following development, although there are some measures that are out there. So we still have some major challenges, and I'm actually hiring faculty to do a fair amount of research on these developmental progress things. But what we need to do is we need to be able to say to our legislators that this type of treatment that an insurance is currently paying for does or does not work. Okay. So does 4 to 6 hours of ABA a week, does that have any evidence whatsoever that it actually helps a child with autism? The answer is no. There's no evidence that short of ABA actually does work. Okay. If you look in the insurance bill that was actually passed, okay, for everybody in the state of Kentucky, which the insurance companies are supposed to be following, but they don't. The insurance company bill says that you're supposed to pay for $50,000 a year between ages 1 and 7 for therapy, okay? That translates into about 25 hours a week of ABA. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Away for the rest of it.
Yeah. So anyways, there is evidence that at least 25 hours a week of ABA does actually make a huge developmental difference in terms of IQ points after 2 years. 20-point difference, okay, in terms of kids who get community therapy versus kids who get 25 hours of ABA. That translates into saving $1 million in cost of your child's life over his lifetime between the ages 3 and 65. One therapy. Okay. So, I as a physician and as a Kentucky taxpayer have a little trouble digesting that in terms of you want to spend much more of my tax dollars because you want to save money in your current year. So But anyways, but we need a lot more. We need a lot more of that sort of really thinking about those sorts of things. So our mission of these families is to provide a single source, and that's what we want for you guys too. Okay, we want there to be a single source in Paducah for diagnosis, for treatment, for referral, and for information. Okay. And that's what we want to have here too. But we're starting with the center itself. Okay, sure. This is the dedication of Dr. Ramsey. So for those of you who are young, okay, be nice to the people on the way up, okay? Because when you're older, when you're 50, you might meet somebody who's actually helped you a lot, okay? This guy here, this is the former dean of the School of Education, Blake Hazelton. He was my guidance counselor in high school. Okay? So, if there are any young students in the room, be nice to the people on the way up, because you never know. I haven't seen this, until I got here in January, I hadn't seen that guy for 35 years. Okay? Be nice to him on the way up. All right, so we're more than a building. Go ahead. So we provide a range of services, mainly focused obviously on the clinical services, but we also are the central hub for training throughout the state of Kentucky. And we also have a very active research program. Okay, so clinical services, what are we trying to do? So we're trying to empower families to really target and treat autistic features, as well as obviously the comorbidities of autism. Go ahead. So what we're trying to tell everybody is our mantra for these Autism Care Network is evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices, evidence-based practices. And the legislature has actually started to catch on to this, and for instance, they just put into law the fact that our BCBAs, not to pick on them, but our BCBAs actually have to be professionally certified. So before you didn't have to be certified, now you do. So we're going to need to do that for a lot of the different specialties that work in autism. Build generalization of skills. We certainly want to teach our families, and certainly that has a lot of good evidence that actually further advances family development. And then the other thing that's very important for us and important for clinical foundations is to collaborate with community partners, everybody in this room. Right? So, like many other autism centers, we do a lot of behavioral support.